All right, welcome everyone to today's live broadcast. Today we're going to be talking about the Boston Marathon course preview and perfectly planning your race with the Stryd Race Power Calculator. And I'm so excited for today's broadcast because we get to talk about one of my favorite races. One of my favorite races to attend is the Boston Marathon. We've gone many years in a row now. We've talked to so many different Stryd users, folks that have run Boston for the first time, that have pre-race jitters, to runners that have run it many, many times. And they all get to share their experiences with us. And we get to, of course, see their Stryd power data, see how they race, what kind of strategies are successful with Stryd, what kind of pitfalls runners commonly run into. And I'm going to be educating you on all those great learnings I've had over the years. And of course, sharing the race course profile, how to plan for the race course, including all the downhills, the heartbreaking hills, and also kind of the expected temperature and humidity conditions. And of course, if you want to see us in person, we are going to be at the Boston Marathon Expo in just a week from now. Come by and see us. We'll be there. We can help you get set up the next gen Stryd. If you want to purchase the next gen Stryd, we can help give you your race plan if you're going to be racing with Stryd for the Boston Marathon, and also tell you more about power if you're just interested in learning. And also, we're going to be having a group run. So on Saturday, April 15th at 9 a.m. local time, we'll be having an easy 3-mile shakeout run with some members of the Stryd team and other Striders. So come share your passion for running power and join us. We're going to be at the George Robert White Memorial Public Garden, the corner of Arlington Street and Beacon Street. So come join us, get a power-based run in before the race. This is how we're going to structure the webinar for today. We're going to be having the Boston course preview for the first half, and then we're going to be talking about the race power calculator for the second half and covering lots of great topics, including how the race power calculator updates your race plan to your capabilities, selecting your race course, accounting for environmental conditions, fine-tuning your plan once you get a great plan from the race power calculator, simulating race day so you're all set to have your best race, and executing with the Boston Race Strategy Workout. So we have a very special workout collection we're going to be talking about today, and a few ways to tweak your race strategy based on power. So let's jump into it. First, the Boston Marathon course. So it's a point-to-point race, a net drop in elevation, and features heartbreaking rolling hills. Very famous course here, finishing in Boston. And let's take a look at the course profile. So here you can see in the light gray shade, we can see the elevation course for the profile. And of course, everyone's familiar with the heartbreaking hills in the latter half of the race towards the end. And something that doesn't get talked about much is, of course, the starts of the race. And we kind of call it the provocative first 4 miles, and that's this downhill. So you're going to have a very fast start when you're running with the crowd. There's so much excitement at the start of the race. You're going to be running downhill. And here it's so critical to stay focused on your power target, because this is, as I just said, this is where it's easy to get caught up in excitement, start running fast, think you're going to have, the race of your life, and, it's way faster than you've ever gone. And, this is easy to get caught up in because, once again, due to the excitement. But during these first 4 miles, it's so critical to stay focused on your power target, especially to not exceed your power target, because a lot of runners, when they're training for this race, they forget about this. They've been practicing their downhill running. And this is where it's easy to put a lot of mechanical stress on the body, really wear the body out, wear the legs out in the first 4 miles. And this, how your execution these first 4 miles of the race really determines how you're going to execute the rest of the race. So once again, so critical to stay under your power target, especially if not practice downhill running, and maybe even stay under your power target by a significant amount, because Stryd reports metabolic power, and if you try and run to that metabolic power output during those first 4 miles, you might actually exceed your mechanical capability. So sometimes it's actually more important to kind of run to feel for these first 4 miles and not stay to the power target, simply because you might overload your body with that mechanical stress early on in the race. And then things coast a while, and then you get to the heartbreaking hills. And this is really a test of will. But more importantly, it's to find out how well you pace the first half of the race. Because if you paced the first half of the race really, really well, you're going to do great on these heartbreaking hills, and you're going to be, very successful. And you're going to be able to cruise to the finish and have a fantastic race. So, this is kind of the moment of truth for a lot of folks. This is also where a lot of runners commonly hit the wall, but the, challenge is exacerbated by the hills. So that's kind of a quick look at the course profile and two unique challenges you're going to face. And now let's look at what you can expect for temperature and humidity. So as I was reading more about this race, I love reading about the race, even though I read articles about the race every year. Um, there's always something new to discover, some new quotes to discover. And this is one I found on Runner's World in an article about the race. And it says here the recorded temperature on the course, and this is on the 2012 edition of the race. The recorded temperature on the course peaked at 89 degrees Fahrenheit during the hottest Boston in many years. The men's and women's winning times were both 9 minutes slower than the year before when the race was held on a cool day with a prevailing headwind. So I think this is really a great quote that demonstrates the unpredictability of the course. It can be hot, it can be cold, it can be snowy, it can be rainy. You really have to be prepared for anything. And that's something the race power calculator can really help you do because you can input your temperature conditions, the humidity conditions, and get an adjusted race plan. And that'll prepare you for anything you can expect to see on race day. So, like I said, we've talked to a lot of striders over the years. We've gotten to look at a lot of their data. We've seen successful race execution and unsuccessful race execution. And I want to cover some of these to show you how you can have success and some pitfalls you can avoid for the race. So here's race example one in Boston. And this is from a number of years ago, I think 2018 or 2019. And this race was very successful because they respected the hills and they quickly recognized surges they were having at the beginning of the race and adjusted. So we have the race execution on the bottom here. You can see the white line is the runner's critical power. And as all striders know, it's important to stay under critical power when you're executing a marathon race. The yellow line is, of course, power output. So you can see that power output second by second over the course of the race. Then we also have the elevation profile that I showcased at the start of this presentation on the course profile. So the runner here had respected the uphills and downhills. They recognized the surges and adjusted. So you can see here at the beginning of the race, they were, they started out, on that first downhill, they ramped down the power target. They were, very patient. But as soon as, they picked up that speed and they hit that first uphill, they quickly surged over critical power. And as I mentioned, all striders know this is very dangerous. You can't run over critical power over the course of a marathon for very long. But they quickly recognized this. They were looking at their power target. They saw the danger in this and they adjusted. They did one more quick surge over critical power. And then they were able to bring that down under critical power for the majority of the rest of the race. And you can see here that since they respected that power target, they stick to the power target, they respected the critical power, they're actually able to go faster and push the wattage higher during the last 4 miles of the marathon versus the first 4 miles of the marathon. So a marathon's a long race, mistakes are going to be made, but it's critical to monitor your power target and identify those surges quickly so you can adjust and not, really drain your gas tank. And that's what this runner did so well. They recognized those surges and adjusted. So let's take a look at the second race. And this is kind of will illustrate some pitfalls of the race and something you definitely want to avoid and a not so successful race execution. So once again, we can see the race execution on the bottom of the screen. You can see the runner had a very high power output during the first half of the race. And the second half of the race, the power output really trailed off. You can even see some walking sections where the power really trailed off during the second half. So what happened here is the runner got caught up in the excitement of the race. They felt so good coming off those first four hills. Off the first hills of the race, they just kept the power output high. You can see here for significant portions of the race, they ran over critical power. And they maintained this for practically, almost half the race. And then they paid for it during the second half where, the power slowly started ramping down. It started ramping down. They tried to maintain it here. And then as they reached the Heartbreak Hills, they had to start walking. They had to start walking during the uphills. They tried to pick up during the downhills to recapture, build that momentum again, but it wasn't successful. So they had to recover for a large portion of the race. It wasn't a very successful race. And then they were to push it towards the end, but they would have been a far more successful race if they would have stayed under their critical power for the duration of the race and stuck to a race plan and not got caught up in the excitement. Race example number 3. So this one, once again, looks very similar to our first race. It's a very successful execution where the runner stayed under their critical power. They stayed much closer to a marathon power target. Once again, recognize the surges. They trust their power target. There's basically no part in this race where they exceeded critical power for an extended period of time. And really, this is a very successful execution. This looks like someone who just started to run with power because there's still a good amount of variability, and there was definitely a bit of a trailing off towards the second half of the race. And as you get more comfortable with running with power and you become better at maintaining a consistent power output, you're going to have more successful race execution. But overall, this is a very successful race execution. Recognize the surges, adjust, and have a very successful race. And moving on to our last example here, another scenario where there were some challenges. And illustrate some pitfalls to avoid in the course of the Boston Marathon is, hill specific prep here. So, this runner had, okay execution. They had a few surges at the start, but you can see that the hills caught up with them. They pushed a little too hard at the start of the race. They kind of burned their legs out. And as they reached the Heartbreak Hills during the second half, they hit the wall. I think this runner could have benefited from some race specific execution, adding in some long runs during their training with hills in the second half. So they're used to, working those muscles, running uphill as they started to fatigue. And if they had worked in more hill specific prep, especially during long runs, I think they could have had a more successful race execution. So that's basically our Boston course preview here. And just to recap, you want to set a power target that's underneath your critical power at a marathon target. You want to be mindful of surges, not get caught up in the excitement in the beginning of the race and the downhills. You want to prepare for the weather. It can be unpredictable, where it can shift wildly from year to year. And definitely use the Stryd Race Power Calculator to input those temperature and humidity conditions to adjust. And now I want to jump into the race power calculator. And the race power calculator can help you prepare for your perfect Boston race. It can help you prepare for any race from 1 mile up to 50K. And it's going to give you a power target you can execute at. It's going to give you a predicted time. It's going to give you an idea of your pace over the course of the race and how that relates to the elevation profile, and allow you to adjust for those environmental conditions. So here you can see a screenshot of the race power calculator on PowerCenter. And once again here, we have some familiar visual elements here. The yellow line is, of course, power. The blue line is pace in this case, and the gray kind of shaded area is the elevation. And you can see here that, of course, over the course of a race, most power-based races are going to be most successfully executed at a steady power target from start to finish, where you're just maintaining a steady metabolic output from the beginning of the race to the end of the race. And of course, that's going to lead to a varying pace based on the elevation of the race. So the blue line, the pace that varies, where of course in the Boston scenario, the pace is going to be higher at the start because you're running on that downhill. It's going to vary over the course of the race as you run those uphills and downhills, and vary even more as you come to the Heartbreak Hills towards the end of the race. And on the right side, you can see the inputs such as, the training elevation, the temperature and humidity, and also the power target that someone's going to be running at over the course of a race. And the race power calculator is available on both the PowerCenter at stryd.com/PowerCenter and the Stryd mobile app. And it's giving you access to the same tool set where you can input the same conditions, select the race course, and visualize your target power and your expected finishing time. Now let's jump into how the race power calculator works and basically some tips to get the best use out of the race power calculator. So a really cool feature of this is, let's say at the start of your training block, you're 3 months out from a race, you put that event on your calendar using the Stryd mobile app. That race power target is going to adjust as your capabilities adjust. And this is all fed by the power duration curve and your critical power. As your critical power changes and the power duration curve changes, and as your skill set as a runner adapts over the course of a race, over the course of a training block, that's going to impact the predicted calculation for the race. So you can see how your power target increases, the times start dropping. And this is all going to be considering your last 90 days of data. So for most runners, they're going to be, have that 3 month training block. That's going to include their entire build to the race. And that's all considered in the race power calculator is your skill set and your last 90 days of data. And here's a little tip to get the most out of the race power calculator, get a really accurate prediction, is to log a 3 minute max effort and a 10 minute max effort. And the reason for logging these efforts is different. A 3 minute effort kind of balances your power duration curve, it brings your critical power down to a correct level. So this is important to have that accurate critical power for all your training zones. And a 10-minute best effort gives the race power calculator kind of an idea of what kind of runner you are. So previously we had classifications in the mobile app, such as an aerobic monster, a speed demon. And you can kind of think of it in that way when you log a 10-minute best effort. Are you someone who exceeds more at shorter distance events or someone who exceeds better at longer distance events? And these two data points give the race power calculator a very critical insight into what kind of runner you are, give you the accurate training zones, and basically give you the best prediction for your race. So I recommend logging these efforts as your fitness changes. You can do a standard 10-minute, 3-minute critical power test throughout your training block in order to establish these efforts. The next great feature of the race power calculator is your ability to select a race course. So we have a lot of verified race courses in the Stryd mobile app, and on the PowerCenter you can select, and you can also add your own course. So for example, if you're not running in these races, you're running local races, and you want to input a race. You want to look for a fit file from someone who has run the course before. Go online, find the course on Strava or another course building website. Download that, and you can upload that to the Stryd PowerCenter to kind of get your own prediction for your own custom course. And it's so critical to put your course in because, especially if there's a lot of hills, then you can see how that impacts your projected time. Your power target might not change much from standard marathon, a flat marathon versus your own custom course, but it'll definitely have an impact on your expected finishing time. So it kind of gives you an idea of what to expect and how hills definitely impact your ability to turn speed into power and what kind of finishing time you can expect. The next factor, as we just talked about earlier with the Boston Marathon, is you can account for environmental conditions such as elevation, temperature, and humidity. And of course, this can change wildly before race day. You don't know what it's going to be. So you always want to check of course, what's going to happen on race day, check in the days leading up to it, and put that into the race power calculator and see how that impacts your expected power target and finishing time. So, if you train in super cool conditions and you're expecting a hot race day, that can bring your power target down and bring your expected finishing time down and give you a far more realistic idea of what you can accomplish. So, definitely track that leading up to race day, put that into race power calculator and see how that's going to impact your expected finishing time. And one tip here is to set the temperature and humidity based on what is expected mid-race. So of course, a lot of races start in the morning. It's going to be very cool. And, this can lead to a very fast prediction, but we also know that temperature and humidity can quickly ramp up as the sun comes out, especially over the course of a longer race like a marathon. It can get very hot mid-race. And you want to kind of predict based on what the temperature is going to be out through the day, what that temperature and humidity is going to be around mid-race, because it's going to give you a far more realistic idea on what you should target over the course of the race instead of the beginning where it's more cool. Next feature is fine-tuning your plan. So I know we had a question in the chat already on, for example, let's say you want to fine-tune your race. Let's say you have made to put in all the best efforts leading up to the race, and you think you can be a little more aggressive in your target, or let's say it's a very hilly race course and you're well suited to run hills, but more suited than even Stryd thinks you are. You can fine-tune your plan, adjust the power target, and see how that impacts your expected finishing time. So, of course, you don't want to deviate too far from Stryd's recommendation. Stryd's recommendation is going to be very accurate if you meet the criteria. But it's going to be a great tool to have, especially if you want to be more aggressive or more conservative in your target to kind of understand the best case and worst case scenarios. So my tip is, ramp the power target up a few watts, ramp it down a few watts. Just take a look at what the expected finishing times are going to be. So you kind of have an idea of your best case scenario and worst case scenario and what to expect on race day. And setting your expectations is a huge part of success because it's going to give you the idea that no matter what, you either overachieved, or if you come in a little slower, that was also within expectations. The next tip I have is simulate race days. So in the weeks leading up to race day, you're going to have your power target, expected finishing time. I definitely recommend to do a bit of a race simulation leading up to race day to kind of see how that power target feels, and also run in the conditions you expect to see on race day. So find a course locally that has similar surface conditions, similar amount of hills, do a few miles at your race power target, and get a sense for what that power target feels like. That's going to be critical to getting comfortable, having confidence going into race day, and also testing your setup. Let's say you're using the Stryd workout app for the first time to record a race, using it for the first time for guidance. You want to make sure your setup's correct so that you go into race day all with familiarity and very high amount of confidence. So those are basically some of the top features of the race power calculator. So definitely, log your best efforts leading to race day, get a very accurate prediction, select your race course, find the race course from another runner, upload that so you have an idea of what your expected finishing time is going to be. Monitor the temperature and humidity conditions so you can input that. So that's going to impact your power target and your expected finishing time. Simulate race day leading up to the big day. Make sure you're comfortable with your power target, make sure your watch is set up correctly, and those things are all going to lead to an extremely successful race day. So one thing that's new that we just added in the past few days is the Boston Race Strategy workout. So the Boston Race Strategy workout is basically a kind of tailored race plan for the Boston Marathon. So as we talked about, the Boston Marathon has some unique challenges. It has the downhill at the start, has the hills later in the race. That can lead to, sometimes it's better to take a unique power strategy. So what this race is, this workout's going to have you do, it's going to have you start at a bit of a lower power target for those hills, especially if you're not used to running, down hills for such a prolonged amount of time. And it's going to have you slowly ramp that power target up over the course of the race. So you can kind of have a negative split even in terms of power over the course of the race. And, this is especially important if your skill set's, better suited to running uphills and not so much downhills at the start of a race. So definitely check this out, import this into the Stryd workout app, either on your Garmin watch or your Apple Watch. And even if you don't have one of those watches and you want to execute this race, you can kind of look to this for inspiration, see how just small shifts in your power target, your targeting can impact your race. And something to keep in mind as you execute your race, whether you're using another sports watch without a guided workout mode. And of course, the Race Power Calculator is available for Stryd membership users. So all those advanced features are available for anyone who has the Stryd membership. And if you don't have the Stryd membership, you can still use the race calculation tables. So the race calculation table is going to be giving you the time and power targets for 1 mile, 5K, 10K, half marathon, and marathon. This assumes a flat course and the conditions you trained in leading up to the race. So you're often going to find the power targets very good, but if you run on a hillier race course, it will definitely impact the time. But this can still be an awesome guidance for anyone who is not yet a Stryd membership user, and a great tool to have to help plan out your race. But of course, if you want all the great features of the Race Power Calculator, you should upgrade to the Stryd membership to experience the best of Stryd. And you can upgrade at one moment. I was receiving a phone call, but you can definitely check that out and experience the best of Stryd with the Race Power Calculator. You can upgrade on the PowerCenter or within the Stryd mobile app. And also, we have the Next Gen Stryd available starting from last year. So if you want to upgrade to the Next Gen Stryd, get access to the Stryd membership. All Next Gen Stryd purchases come with the Stryd membership, even though it's not required. You get to still experience the best of Stryd whenever you upgrade to the next gen Stryd. And once again, we are going to be at the Boston Marathon Expo, so come visit us. And we are going to be giving out race plans. We're going to be having device discounts if you want to upgrade to the next gen Stryd. And also join us for a group run. So on Saturday, April 15th at 9 a.m. local time, we're going to have an easy 3-mile shakeout run at George Robert White Memorial Public Garden on the corner of Arlington and Beacon Street. So come join us. See the Stryd team, run with the Stryd team, meet other Stryd users, and get that shakeout up run before your Boston Marathon. So we're going to be having some questions now. So if you have any questions, ask them in the chat and I will be answering. I see we already had a few questions come in, so I'm going to help answer those. So we have a question here saying, I updated from Stryd Win to the Stryd Next Gen, and that was 40 days ago. The Next Gen Stryd measures 15 watts higher. How accurate is my 90-day auto-calculated critical power? So as you transition from the previous Gen Stryd to the Next Gen Stryd, you can still use a lot of your power values. Your power target is going to be very familiar. But in some cases, the Next Gen Stryd does offer more responsiveness. It offers more accurate biomechanical measures, such as form power. And this can have an impact on your power values. So it is important to establish your power duration curve again. So you want to evaluate the criteria of the power duration curve and make sure you're meeting those, getting the max efforts in and the anaerobic range, the aerobic range. And if you've completed that, your auto-calculated critical power will be accurate with the Next Gen Stryd. And your race predictions are also going to be accurate. But if they're not accurate yet, of course, you can always fine-tune your power target using the strategy I mentioned earlier, where you need to adjust it up a few percentage to account for those 15 watts in the case that you haven't been able to get those max effort runs in. So, a few small tweaks can, make your race more accurate, your race prediction more accurate. The next question is, how do I see my finishing time and the power it'll take to achieve that time? So you can take a look in the Stryd mobile app, look at the race calculations table. If you do not have the Stryd membership, and if you do have the Stryd membership, you can add an event in the Stryd mobile app or visit the tools section on the PowerCenter, and you're going to be able to access the race power calculator and see your expected finishing time and power. So the next question is a 50-kilometer race with a 1,300-meter uphill also covered in the race power calculator? So the race power calculator does cover distances from 1 mile up to 50K. In some cases where there's extreme elevation changes, the race power calculator is not going to account for this because you're going to have to apply a specialized race strategy. So you visit the Stryd Help Center. We have a great article going to a webinar of Coach Annie Dubois that's going to cover how to plan ultra races with more extreme elevation changes. So definitely upload your course, take a look if it's covered. If it's not covered, I definitely recommend checking out the webinar from Coach Annie Dubois. The next question is, can a first-time Stryd user use Stryd on race day with a target finishing time? Could I buy at the Boston Marathon Expo with assisted setup? So if you do buy Stryd at the Boston Marathon, we will help you get set up. If you're a first-time Stryd user, we definitely encourage you to run with Stryd and record the data because it's going to be so critical in establishing your Stryd profile, establish your critical power, establish your race power targets moving forward. We can give some guidance. If you want to do a Strava import, bring in your last 90 days of data, we might be able to help establish kind of a loose power range you can run on. Of course, if this is your first time using power, you might not be used to running with power. So I would really treat this as kind of a loose guidance rather than hard race plan if it's your first time using Stryd. But we can definitely help you get set up and give you a pretty good power target, even if you're a first-time user with the Strava 90-day import. The next question is, I try to add the race strategy collection from library and it says no workouts. So we'll definitely check that out. There could be, we might need to make a slight adjustment there so the workouts are available to you. But for the majority of users, you should be able to open that up and check out the Boston race strategy workout. The next question we have is, what race information on the watch is useful? Have you advice about that? I use Peter's race pacer on Garmin to plan to see if I'm behind or ahead of my target time. So with power, it's extremely simple to race on power. You're going to have a single power target to run, and most runners either just use real time power, or sometimes they also use lap power in to assist kind of their power target, the real time power. So they look at the power target in real time to make sure they're on second by second, but then they use lap power to make sure they're also not overcooking themselves for miles at a time. So I would definitely recommend real time power and maybe lap power and to complement the real time power value. We have a comment from Coach Bobby McGee. Thank you for joining, Bobby. Boston is all about staying in your power range early, protection against your eccentric overloading to be able to run effectively later. And I think that's such a great comment, and it definitely puts it succinctly. Concept I was trying to describe early is for that first downhill section, you can definitely overcook yourself, even if you're running at your marathon pace, pace you're very comfortable at. That eccentric overloading can definitely cost you later. So it's important to maybe even stay under your target pace, your target power early in the race so you can run effectively later. The next question we have saying, is stride power calculated by shoe weight? Stride power calculated the shoe weight. So with Stryd, you do input the runner's weight for a power target that's personalized to you. The shoe weight is going to have not such a big impact on your performance with Stryd. So, you'll input your body weight for a kind of a personalized power target, but Stryd does not bring in the shoe weight, and the shoe weight is not needed for a accurate power target. We have a question from Steve saying, what are the best workouts to start with Stryd? What gives me the most correct data? So we have a 2-week intro to power plan, and the 2-week intro to power plan is definitely something I'd recommend if it fits in your training cycle, because it's going to help you establish your Stryd profile. It's going to have you do a series of runs that'll build that power duration curve I talked about, including max effort, kind of shorter duration efforts from 1 minute, 2 minute, 5 minute, and then longer duration efforts such as a 5K. And that's going to help you establish a power duration curve and help you get started with Stryd successfully. The next question is, does the auto lap feature work in event mode? I find that while running an event, I have no idea how am I doing in regards to kilometer split time. And this is a great feature suggestion. We definitely want to bring in auto lap functionality if you are executing a structured event or workout. So what our Boston Marathon Strategy collection does is it breaks into 4 separate sections. So you're going to be alerted after each of those sections to your power target and kind of your lap average power during those sections. So if you are building a workout for an event, I definitely recommend breaking that into kind of, for longer events, maybe like a marathon, 5-kilometer sections. So you are notified on kind of a regular time interval on how you're doing. And finally, can Garmin Watch via Stryd Workout app provide lap times? So you can customize the data fields. You can customize the data fields in the Stryd Workout app to provide more information. So definitely, visit the settings of the Stryd app and customize your data fields in order to provide that information. So lots of questions today. Thanks everyone for your questions. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope that was insightful. Once again, we're going to be having a group run on Saturday, April 15th in Boston. So join us for an easy 3-mile shakeout run and join other Stryders. Visit us at the Boston Marathon Expo if you want to upgrade to the next gen Stryd or check over your race plan. Purchase the next gen Stryd at stryd.com/store. And you're going to be getting access to the next gen Stryd, the more responsive power, the impact loading rate, the lower body stress score, all the tremendous new features on the next gen Stryd. in order to better pace, better run more effectively, and also Stryd membership, so you can get access to the race power calculator. And if you're already running a Stryd, definitely upgrade to the Stryd membership if you want access to the race power calculator and get access to all these tremendous features we talked about today. That's all I have today. Thanks everyone for joining.